Lucas Marshall was a man accustomed to winning. Wealthy, self-assured, and fiercely competitive, he thrived on challenges. At a glittering New York gala, his closest friend, Jack, decided to test that ego with a bold wager. "You're always chasing the thrill, Lucas," Jack smirked, swirling his champagne. "But here's a challenge I bet you can't handle. Marry a woman who doesn't fit your usual type. Think you've got the guts?" Lucas raised an eyebrow. Known for his impeccable taste in beautiful, high-society women, the proposition caught him off guard. But Lucas was never one to back down. "What's the prize?" he asked with a cool smile. Jack's grin widened as he leaned closer. $1 million. If you marry her and stay married for 6 months. No quitting, no loopholes. The challenge was too enticing to resist. For Lucas, it was more than just a bet. It was a game to win. Without hesitation, he accepted. Little did he know, this wager would unravel a story that would challenge everything he thought he knew about control, connection, and himself. Days later, Lucas received details about the woman at the heart of this unusual arrangement. Chloe Richards. She wasn't the kind of woman he typically pursued. Independent, strong-willed, and unapologetically herself, she was nothing like the polished socialites Lucas usually dated. Instead of deterring him, her unconventional allure intrigued him. Their first meeting was set at an exclusive restaurant, Lucas's preferred arena of control. When Chloe arrived, she immediately stood out. Not just in appearance, but in her presence. Her confidence radiated as she approached their table. "You must be Lucas Marshall," she said, her voice steady as she took her seat. "And you must be Chloe Richards," Lucas replied, offering a hand. Chloe hesitated for a moment, then shook it firmly. Her grip spoke volumes about her strength and determination. "Let's not waste time," she began bluntly. "I know about the bet, the terms, and the conditions." Lucas's expression remained calm, though her directness caught him off guard. "And yet you're here," he replied, leaning forward slightly. "Why?" Chloe's eyes met his, unflinching. "Let's just say I have my reasons. But make no mistake, Lucas. I'm not someone you can control or manipulate. 6 months may seem short, but a lot can happen in that time." Her words were a challenge, and Lucas couldn't help but feel a spark of admiration. Chloe was unlike anyone he'd encountered, a woman who met his intensity head-on. Their next meeting took place in a humble cafe, a stark contrast to the lavish venues Lucas frequented. Chloe had suggested it, and though it wasn't his usual style, Lucas was curious. When he arrived, Chloe was already there, sipping tea with a quiet confidence. "Not your usual scene, is it?" she teased as he took a seat. "Sometimes it's good to try something new," Lucas replied smoothly, masking the slight discomfort he felt outside his element. They chatted briefly, exchanging pleasantries, but Chloe wasted no time cutting to the heart of the matter. "If we're going to do this, let's set some ground rules," she said, placing her cup down firmly. "I'm not interested in your money or your lifestyle. 6 months is 6 months, and when it's over, I walk away exactly as I came." Lucas studied her, impressed by her candor. "So what do you want then?" he asked. "Freedom," she said without hesitation. "I'll honor the agreement, but my life doesn't revolve around you. I have my own plans, and they won't change just because of a temporary arrangement." For a man who thrived on control, Lucas found her independence refreshing. "Fair enough," he agreed. 6 months. After that, we part ways." Their mutual understanding set the stage for a unique partnership. While Lucas viewed the marriage as a strategic move to win the bet, Chloe had her own reasons for agreeing, and her own rules to ensure her autonomy remained intact. As the days passed and the wedding date approached, Lucas couldn't shake the growing curiosity he felt toward Chloe. She wasn't a pawn in his game. She was a force of her own, and for the first time he began to wonder if winning this bet might come at a cost he wasn't prepared for. Lucas had always prided himself on his strategic mind, but as the events unfolded, he began to realize this game was far more complex than he had anticipated. The wedding itself was a somber affair, cold, calculated, and devoid of emotion. It felt more like a transaction than a union. Lucas Marshall, ever the planner, had walked into the arrangement with unwavering confidence. He believed he had already won. 6 months was all it would take, he thought. Chloe's resolve would crumble under the weight of the opulent lifestyle he was about to provide. Right after the ceremony, Lucas escorted Chloe to his penthouse, a towering glass fortress in the heart of New York City. It was a testament to his wealth, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city skyline and interiors dripping with extravagance. To Lucas, this wasn't just a home. It was his battlefield, where he planned to win Chloe over with the power of luxury. But from the moment she stepped inside, Chloe made her position clear. Her calm but defiant demeanor struck Lucas. She walked to one of the massive windows, gazed out at the city, and said firmly, "6 months, Lucas. Not a day more." Lucas smirked, his confidence unwavering. He had faced resistance before, and every woman in his life had eventually fallen for his charm or wealth. Chloe, he thought, would be no exception. In the days following their wedding, Lucas threw himself into his mission. He showered her with extravagant gifts, designer clothes, priceless jewelry, and exclusive vacations. But to his frustration, Chloe refused to indulge. She clung to her modest routine and declined his offers with a calmness that unnerved him. "I don't need these things, Lucas," she'd say, her tone steady but firm. It was a response that gnawed at him. For a man used to getting his way, her resistance felt like a direct challenge to his authority. What began as a wager now felt personal. Lucas became more determined, even ruthless. He began controlling her life, canceling her work commitments, manipulating her schedule, and blocking her from opportunities. Yet, no matter how much he tightened his grip, Chloe stood her ground, her resolve only growing stronger. Their relationship turned into a battleground, with tension simmering beneath every interaction. Lucas tried different tactics to undermine her, but Chloe met each one with unyielding resilience. One evening, exasperated by her indifference, Lucas confronted her. "What is it you want, Chloe?" he demanded. "Any other woman would kill for this life, but you act like it means nothing." Chloe finally met his gaze, her eyes flashing with intensity. "What do I want?" she said. "I want respect, Lucas. I'm not a pawn in your game. You think money can control me, but it can't buy integrity or dignity. That's what you don't understand. All this wealth means nothing if there's no substance behind it." Her words hit him like a slap, shattering the image he had of himself. For the first time, Lucas felt truly exposed. Chloe wasn't just rejecting his wealth. She was challenging the very foundation of his identity. Instead of retreating, Lucas doubled down. He isolated Chloe further, closing doors to her career and sabotaging her efforts to build her own success. But Chloe was no victim. She met every obstacle with quiet determination, refusing to yield. Then one night, Chloe turned the tables. "You think you're in control, don't you?" she said, her voice measured but confident. "But you don't realize I have my own plan, and when the time is right, you'll see that this game is bigger than you could ever imagine." For the first time, Lucas felt the stirrings of fear. Had he underestimated her? Was she, in fact, the one in control? As the weeks passed, their dynamic grew increasingly complex. Lucas, consumed by his obsession with dominance, began to see Chloe in a new light. She wasn't just an opponent, she was a mirror reflecting his own vulnerabilities. For the first time, he wondered if he had miscalculated, not just the game, but Chloe herself. Late one night, standing alone in his penthouse, Lucas stared out at the city lights. Once they had made him feel powerful. Now they only highlighted the emptiness around him. Chloe, with her quiet strength, had done something no one else had. She had made him question himself. And as Lucas wrestled with these unfamiliar emotions, he realized this wasn't just about winning anymore. Chloe had become far more than a piece on his chessboard. She was the one thing he couldn't predict, and for a man who thrived on control, that was the most unsettling truth of all. Chloe continued her daily routine, but something about her felt different. Each day, she seemed more distant, as if she were waiting for something Lucas couldn't comprehend. To him, it felt like an invisible barrier had formed between them, one he couldn't break through. The uncertainty gnawed at him. Was it his pride holding him back, or was he simply terrified of losing control? Whatever it was, Chloe captivated him in a way he'd never imagined possible. "You've changed," Lucas's friend Jack remarked one evening over dinner. Jack, the mastermind behind the bet that started it all, smirked knowingly. "Normally, you'd have this all figured out by now, but it seems like this woman has you spinning in circles." Lucas forced a smile, unwilling to admit the truth. Jack was right. Chloe was different. She wasn't like anyone he'd ever known, and she was starting to challenge everything he thought he understood. That night, Lucas returned to the penthouse with a newfound determination. He had to settle things to get Chloe out of his head. This was supposed to be a simple agreement, nothing more. But as he stepped inside, he saw her sitting on the couch, engrossed in a book. She looked so peaceful, so unaffected by his turmoil. "Can we talk?" Lucas asked, his voice breaking the silence that had become their norm. Chloe looked up, closing her book with deliberate calm. "Of course. she replied, her tone serene but alert, as if she had been expecting this. Lucas sat across from her, searching for the right words. The tension between them was thick, almost suffocating. He finally broke the silence. "What are we doing, Chloe?" His voice was low, but the sincerity in it surprised even himself. "This started as a game, a bet. But now I don't know what to think anymore." Chloe's gaze didn't waver. She studied him for a moment before responding. "I'm not playing, Lucas. I never was." Her voice was steady, but carried a weight that hit him hard. "From the beginning, I accepted this arrangement for reasons that go far beyond you. I don't care about the money or your need for control. I'm here for something bigger. And if you haven't figured that out yet, maybe it's time you did." Lucas felt a knot tighten in his chest. She wasn't just confronting him. She was exposing something about himself he didn't want to face. Frustration boiled over. "I know you're hiding something, Chloe. And what's worse is that the more I try to understand you, the more I realize I'm not in control," he admitted, standing abruptly. "And I hate that." Chloe rose slowly, her calm demeanor never faltering. She stepped closer, standing just inches away from him. "This isn't about control, Lucas," she said softly. "You've spent your life trying to dominate everything and everyone. But with me, you'll have to learn that not everything can be controlled. Some things just are." For a fleeting moment, Lucas saw something in her eyes, a depth he hadn't noticed before. It wasn't about the bet anymore. It wasn't about winning. Chloe was something else entirely, and for the first time, he felt truly vulnerable. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Chloe gave him a small, enigmatic smile. "That's something you need to figure out, Lucas." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, lost in his thoughts. In the days that followed, the distance between them seemed to grow. Yet in a strange way, Lucas felt closer to Chloe than ever. He couldn't stop thinking about her, about what she was hiding, about what she truly wanted. His obsession with unraveling her mystery consumed him, and with each passing day, he felt himself losing control. As the 6 months of their arrangement neared its end, Lucas could hardly sleep. Something was building, some revelation just out of reach, and it terrified him. He began digging into her past, hiring investigators and following every lead. But Chloe's life seemed like a perfectly constructed puzzle, each piece designed to keep him guessing. One night, Lucas returned home late. The balcony light was on, and there she was, seated like a queen overlooking her empire. He knew tonight was the night. Whatever secret she was hiding, he was finally going to uncover it. "I need answers, Chloe," he said, stepping out onto the balcony. His voice was firm, though his heart raced. "I can't keep playing this game. Tell me the truth." Chloe sighed and stood, turning to face him. For the first time, her calm demeanor cracked, revealing a fiery intensity that made Lucas's breath catch. "The truth?" she said, her voice sharp. "Do you really want to hear it?" Lucas nodded, though every fiber of his being screamed to turn away. "You have no idea who I am, do you?" Chloe began, her tone icy. "You've spent your life treating people like pawns in your game. But this time, Lucas, you were the pawn." Her words hit him like a punch. He opened his mouth to speak, but she pressed. The weight of her words struck Lucas like a physical blow. He froze, memories crashing over him like waves. For years, he'd forged ahead, making deals, signing contracts, and climbing the ladder of success, without a second thought to those left in his wake. The faces of countless people he'd trampled blurred together. But now, as Chloe's voice pierced the air, the consequences of his actions came into sharp focus. "Stop!" she shouted, cutting through his feeble attempt to speak. Her voice, raw with emotion, held a power he couldn't ignore. "You have no idea what you've done. This isn't about money, Lucas. This is about lives. Destroyed lives. You didn't just take away opportunities. You took my father from me. The one person I had in this world." Her words were like daggers. Lucas stood helpless as she continued. "While you thrived in luxury, my mother and I sank into despair. We could barely afford to eat, Lucas. Do you even understand what that's like?" Lucas wanted to respond, to explain, to apologize, but no words came. The weight of guilt was suffocating, pressing down on his chest like a relentless force. Chloe's voice softened, but remained steady, dripping with calculated anger. "When I found out about your little bet, I saw my chance. I played along, not because I wanted your money, but because I wanted you to feel it. just a fraction of the pain you've caused. I wanted you to know what it's like to be powerless, to be manipulated. Lucas trembled, feeling the control he'd always prided himself on slip away. He had spent his life mastering the game, believing he was untouchable. Now the roles were reversed. Chloe was the one in control, and Lucas was the pawn. I didn't know, he began, his voice barely a whisper. No, Lucas, she snapped, stepping closer. Her eyes burned with fury, locking on to his. You didn't know because you never cared. You destroyed lives without a second thought, but I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to make sure you never forget. The pain you caused will follow you, haunt you, for the rest of your life. Her words were final, like a gavel striking down a sentence. Lucas felt his legs buckle as he sank onto the couch, stunned into silence. Chloe turned and walked away, leaving him alone with the crushing realization of what he had done. In the days that followed, Chloe's presence was a constant reminder of his failure. She moved through his life like a ghost, acknowledging everyone but him. At breakfast, she sat silently, avoiding his gaze. At work, his decisions were mysteriously undermined, his projects derailed. Though she never admitted it, Lucas knew Chloe was behind it all. One morning, desperate to bridge the chasm between them, he called after her as she was leaving. Chloe, please. We need to talk. She paused but didn't turn around. The silence was deafening, the weight of her indifference unbearable. Finally, she adjusted her coat and walked out, the sound of the door closing echoing in Lucas's mind like a final blow. For the first time in his life, Lucas knew what it felt like to be powerless, to lose control. The tables had turned, and the man who once thrived on manipulation now found himself at the mercy of the one person he'd underestimated. As days turned into weeks, Lucas's attempts to repair the damage were met with cold disdain. Chloe's silence became her weapon, cutting deeper than any words could. His once confident strides faltered, replaced by the hesitation of a man crushed under the weight of his guilt. One evening, he found her reading in the living room, her calm demeanor masking the storm she had unleashed. Summoning the courage to approach her, Lucas spoke, his voice trembling. Chloe, I know I've done terrible things. I know I've hurt you. But please, can we try to fix this? Can we talk? She closed her book slowly, her gaze icy as it met his. Talk, she echoed, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. You think words can fix this? Words are meaningless, Lucas. They won't bring my father back. They won't erase the years of suffering you caused. I'm trying, Lucas pleaded. I'll change. I'll do whatever it takes. Chloe stood, her presence towering despite her calm demeanor. Change, she said, her tone razor-sharp. Do you think changing now will undo the damage you've done? No, Lucas. This isn't about redemption. This is about living with what you've done, carrying that guilt for the rest of your life. Her words left him hollow, a shell of the man he once was. As she walked past him, leaving him alone once again, Lucas realized that there was no path back to the life he'd known. Chloe hadn't just flipped the board, she'd destroyed it, forcing him to face the consequences he had so long ignored. You're ruining my life, Lucas's voice cracked as he stared at Chloe, her face unmoving. She crossed her arms, her tone sharp but calm. Ruining your life? She echoed, tilting her head. No, Lucas. I'm simply holding up a mirror. You're feeling the same pain you so easily gave out. But don't worry, I'm not interested in destroying you financially. That would be too simple. I want you to live through the consequences. I want you to feel everything crumble, piece by piece, until all that's left is regret. Her words hit him like a hammer, shaking the foundation of his carefully built world. Lucas Marshall, the man who always seemed untouchable, who orchestrated others' fates with precision, was now at the mercy of someone who had once trusted him. But Chloe's revenge wasn't loud or chaotic. It was quiet, deliberate, and excruciatingly personal. The days stretched on, each one darker than the last. Chloe wasn't interested in grand displays of vengeance. Instead, her power lay in her indifference. Every time Lucas tried to reach out, he was met with silence or a glance so cold it froze him in his tracks. Once confident and self-assured, Lucas had become a ghost of himself, wandering the house in a haze of guilt and frustration. The weight of his actions pressed down on him, and he began to realize something profound. Words meant nothing. He could apologize 100 times, but apologies wouldn't undo the damage. One morning, Lucas woke with a new determination. He couldn't undo the past, but perhaps he could show Chloe he was capable of change, not through promises, but through actions. He started small. Chloe loved peonies, so he left a fresh bouquet on the kitchen table one afternoon, without a note or explanation. When she returned home, she paused in front of the flowers. She didn't say anything, but Lucas noticed her gently pick up a bloom and inhale its fragrance. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't rejection either. Encouraged, Lucas began paying attention to the details of Chloe's life. He made her coffee just the way she liked it, strong, no sugar, and quietly set it on the table each morning before disappearing to give her space. He didn't press for conversations or try to force reconciliation. He simply showed, through small acts, that he cared. One evening, Chloe stood on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching the city lights. Lucas hesitated, a steaming cup of tea in his hands. Finally, he approached her, holding it out. "I thought you might like something warm," he said softly, careful not to intrude. Chloe took the cup without looking at him, her gaze still fixed on the skyline. For a while, they stood in silence. But this silence felt different, less tense, more open. "Why are you doing this, Lucas?" she finally asked, her voice quiet but firm. He took a deep breath, knowing this was his chance. "Because I realized words don't mean anything anymore. What I did, it can't be undone with apologies. But I'm trying to show you that I've changed. Not just for you, but because I need to be better." Chloe said nothing for a long moment, then finally turned to look at him. Her eyes still held a trace of hurt, but there was something else. A glimmer of curiosity, or maybe hope. In the days that followed, the tension between them began to ease, if only slightly. Chloe still kept her distance, but her walls weren't as impenetrable as before. She began accepting his small gestures, a bouquet of flowers, a cup of tea, a brief morning conversation over breakfast. Then one evening, Chloe walked into the living room as Lucas was getting ready for a business meeting. She hesitated, then spoke. "Can you cancel your meeting tonight?" Lucas froze, stunned by the request. She'd never shown any interest in his schedule before. Without hesitation, he pulled out his phone and canceled. They sat together on the couch, a small but noticeable space between them. For the first time in months, the silence between them didn't feel suffocating. It felt like the beginning of something new, something fragile, but full of possibility. "I'm not ready to fully forgive you, Lucas," Chloe finally said, breaking the heavy silence between them. Her voice was measured, but there was a flicker of something in her tone, perhaps a small crack in the walls she had built. "But I see you're trying. Maybe that's a start." Lucas's heart raced at her words. He didn't dare rush this moment. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was hope. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. He could sense the road ahead would be long and arduous, but for the first time, he felt he might be moving in the right direction. They spent the rest of the evening talking about nothing in particular. Simple, trivial things. Yet, for Lucas, it was a victory. The tension between them had softened, even if only slightly. Chloe wasn't the unreachable figure she had once seemed. She was beginning to let her guard down. Lucas promised himself he wouldn't make the same mistakes again. Still, there was a weight in the air. Lucas couldn't ignore the sense that Chloe was holding something back. Something important. He didn't push her, knowing how fragile this newfound connection was, but the unease lingered. In the weeks that followed, progress came in small but meaningful increments. Chloe no longer met him with cold disdain, though her warmth remained guarded. Lucas dedicated himself fully to proving he had changed. He canceled work meetings, prioritized their time together, and found solace in the small, everyday moments they shared, making breakfast, chatting in the evenings, laughing, albeit cautiously, over old memories. Slowly, the frost between them began to thaw, but the distance in Chloe's eyes never fully disappeared. Lucas sensed that something deeper was weighing on her, and it kept him awake at night. He wondered, what was she not telling him? One evening, as rain pattered softly against the windows of their home, the tension reached its breaking point. Chloe seemed more distant than usual, lost in thought as she gazed out at the dark cityscape. Lucas couldn't bear it any longer. "Chloe," he began, his voice tentative but firm. "I know there's something you're not telling me. I can feel it. Please, if there's more, I need to know." Her hands tightened in her lap, and for a moment, he thought she might not answer. Then, with a deep breath, she turned to him. Her expression was a mix of pain and courage. "You're right," she said softly. "There's something I've been keeping from you. Something I didn't think I could ever say. But maybe it's time." Lucas felt his stomach tighten as he braced himself. "Do you remember the company you destroyed?" The one my father managed? She asked, her voice steady, despite the tremble in her hands. He nodded, confused by her shift in tone. Yes, I know how much that hurt your family. I've been trying to... It's not just that, she interrupted, her voice thick with emotion. It's what else I lost because of it. Lucas's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Chloe's eyes glistened as she looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. I was pregnant, Lucas. Back then, when everything fell apart. The words hit him like a blow to the chest. I didn't know, he stammered, his voice faltering. No, she said bitterly. You didn't know, because you never cared to look beyond your ambitions. When my father lost everything, the stress, the grief, it was too much. I lost the baby, Lucas. Her voice broke, and the tears she had been holding back fell freely. Lucas felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath him. He had always known his actions had consequences, but he had never imagined this. Chloe, I ... He tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. She wiped her tears and looked at him, her expression a mix of anger and heartbreak. You went on with your life like nothing happened. But for me, everything changed. I lost my family, my child, and myself. Lucas felt the crushing weight of her words. He had been so blind, so consumed by his own goals, that he hadn't even realized the depth of the destruction he had caused. I know I can't fix this, he said finally, his voice breaking. But I swear, Chloe, I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. She looked at him for a long moment before speaking. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, she admitted, her tone raw. But I can see you're trying. Maybe, one day, we can find a way forward. But it's not going to be easy. I'll do whatever it takes, Lucas said, his determination unwavering. Chloe stood and moved toward the door, pausing to glance back at him. We'll see, Lucas. Time will tell. As she left the room, Lucas felt a mixture of despair and hope. The journey ahead would be long, but for the first time there was a glimmer of possibility, a chance to rebuild what he had shattered. And he wouldn't waste it. Lucas had reached a breaking point. He realized that if he truly wanted Chloe back in his life, he had to become a man worthy of her respect and of his own. Haunted by the consequences of his ruthless business dealings, he made a decision that morning. He wouldn't let his past define him. Instead, he would start over and work to repair the damage he'd caused. The first step was to confront those he had wronged. Lucas began by visiting the families whose lives had been shattered by his actions. His first stop was a modest house in a quiet neighborhood, a stark contrast to the luxury he was accustomed to. When the door opened, he was met by an older man whose tired eyes reflected years of pain. Lucas introduced himself with a mix of humility and resolve. I'm Lucas Marshall. I'm here to apologize. The man's face hardened. An apology? After everything you've done? What good is that now? I know I can't undo the past, Lucas admitted, his voice steady. But I want to help rebuild what I've broken. It's the least I can do. Over the next few months, Lucas devoted himself to making amends. He met with families, offered financial restitution, and supported small businesses he had previously crushed. But it wasn't just about money. Lucas listened, volunteered his time, and worked to understand the pain he had caused. From a distance, Chloe watched Lucas's transformation. At first, she was skeptical. Was this genuine, or just another ploy? But as time passed, she saw that Lucas's change wasn't superficial. His actions were consistent, and his remorse was real. One evening, as Chloe stood on her balcony overlooking the city, Lucas joined her quietly. He had just returned from another visit, his expression tired but determined. How was it? She asked without turning. Tough, he admitted, but necessary. Every conversation, every apology, it's a step toward becoming a better person. Not just for you, Chloe, but for myself too. Chloe finally looked at him. For the first time in years, the anger and hurt in her eyes seemed to soften. I can see that, she said. Maybe it's time to leave the past behind and build something new. Lucas felt a wave of relief. Those words were more meaningful than he could have hoped for. As their 6-month marriage agreement came to an end, something unexpected happened. The walls between them crumbled. They laughed together, shared stories, and found genuine connection. What began as a cold arrangement blossomed into something real. On the final night of their agreement, Lucas prepared a heartfelt dinner. Nervous but resolute, he said, Chloe, I know this started with a contract, but I don't want it to end. I've fallen in love with you truly. And I want us to continue, not as part of a deal, but as a real couple. Chloe was taken aback, but her heart warmed. I love you too, Lucas, she admitted. Let's build something together, this time as equals. Their love deepened, and months later, Chloe discovered she was pregnant. When she told Lucas, his joy was boundless. He held her close, tears of happiness streaming down his face. I want to do this right, he said. I want to marry you again, this time for love. Their second wedding was simple and intimate, surrounded by close friends and family. It was a celebration of love, redemption, and a fresh start. As they danced that evening, Chloe rested her head on Lucas's chest. Who would have thought all this started with a bet? Lucas smiled, holding her close. The best bet I ever made. Together they faced their future with hope and love, ready to embrace every challenge as a family. What do you think? Did Chloe make the right choice in forgiving Lucas? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. Thank you for watching.